You know, I love Aotea. I love the surrounding mutu that are around it, and I feel when we look at that, I feel like I'm home. It's our home. Our whakapapa tells us we've been here for over 500-600 years. Māori have been here for over 2,000 years. It's our home. And when we hear these sorts of kōrero about other iwi, it's sad to hear.
Beyond the calm waters of the Hauraki Gulf, turmoil is lapping at the shores of Aotea, a remote island known to many as Great Barrier. Its sweeping coastlines, rugged terrain and vast native wildlife sanctuary have been home to the people of Ngati Wai for generations. But the iwi feel its mana here is under serious threat, as land on Aotea is offered to neighbouring iwi for their treaty settlements.
Because they whakapapa to us doesn't give them a reason to claim mana over our whenua.
Ngati Wai has a long history of land loss on Aotea. The Crown sometimes used military force to evict their ancestors from the island, leaving them virtually landless by 1894. For kaumātua o Ngāwaka, the thought of losing any more land, let alone to other iwi, is inconceivable.
Through colonisation, all the land was taken off us, the whole lot. We didn't have a ground of grass to stand on, or dirt to stand on. Thankfully for one of our tupuna, or our tupuna at the time, negotiated for a bit of land for us to live on and support our whānau. So at that time the Crown decided to give us land up in the north here, which at that time they thought was worthless to them, you know. And so it wasn't enough, so they went back and renegotiated again. And so they gave us a bit more. And so here we are, you know, we're here. Now we're hearing all these overlapping issues. And it's sad to hear that because we have battles with the government or Crown over these issues without that happening to us.
Tension over the Crown's land offerings on Aotea has been simmering for over a decade. But land isn't the only thing it's negotiated with other iwi. Between 2010 and 2012, it allowed a group of iwi known as the Pare Hauraki Collective to officially change the island's name.
We hadn't had any engagement with the Crown or anybody about that name change redress. We just accidentally found it, and it really stirred our community in terms of the shockingness of it being situated in the Marituahu settlements rather than in a Ngati Wai settlement, and in particular in the Ngāti Rehua Ngati Wai ki Aotea settlement.
He rika. He mana nui te mana whakaingoa tapa wāhi. Ina tapaina koe te ingoa o te tahi wāhi. He mana tāu kia hua he ingoa mō taua wāhi. Ai ki te noi ho mātou I roto I ngā pepa I muri ho. Ka ohorere katoa Ngāti Wai. Nā reira ai ka nui te pauri te rāpia ka riro taua mana e te tahi ki atu I a mātou. Ka hore I te tika.
The name change was just the beginning. Over the next few years, the Crown continued offering land on Aotea and other parts of the Ngati Wai rohe to neighbouring tribes without consulting with Ngati Wai. Ngati Wai was desperate to know the details of these offers, but repeated requests for information were ignored.
October 2014, I think I made the first official Information Act request. because nothing was provided. And by this time we knew that negotiations were well underway, and we knew that we were not being included in those negotiations. It was frustrating and perplexing as to why they wouldn't provide it. It would seem a reasonable thing to do.
I pupu ake au a wanga I roto ki au i a Ngati Wai, I oku whanaunga I runga I te motu, I te kore aro mai o te tahi, ki te au o Ngati Wai I roto I ēnei tuahuatanga. A koa tērā, e kore rau atu a Ngati Wai e piko ki raro, I reira I konei mātou mai rāno, I tō mātou tupuna I a manaia ke I konei tonu mātou, a ko mātou uri whakaheke ka noho tonu ki o mātou ka hainga haere a kenei.
It took 3 years for Crown officials to give Ngati Wai a detailed outline of what they were offering other iwi. Some of this information was drawn on maps, so Ngati Wai could see exactly which plots of land in its rohe would go. Initially, Ngati Wai was given just 3 weeks to provide feedback.
I had difficulty sleeping at night thinking about these things. The Crown was just sending us letter after letter asking, say, this is the redress we're offering for this iwi, this is the redress we're offering for that iwi, you've got a couple of weeks to 4 weeks to give us a response. And then maybe a month later we would get a preliminary decision from the Minister that he's decided that he's going to pursue the original offers, and then we get another chance to write another letter, and then another month later he would say, oh, final decision, I'm giving them the same redress.
I feel the Crown are masters at creating this type of confusion amongst wherever they go in the world, you know, and they're masters at it. And that's what it's done. It's not about the pūtea for us, it's about the whenua. Our tupuna always taught us that.
The Ngati Wai rohe is surrounded by water, extending from Tapeka Point in the Bay of Islands to Matakana in Mahurangi, encompassing Aotea and all the outer islands. The tribe's deep affiliation to Wai is evident in its name and the livelihoods of its descendants. Opo Ngāwaka spent many years as a fisherman on Aotea and still travels by boat to get to and from his home on the outer island of Mahuki.
Yeah, take those with you.
This is where he built his house and raised a family. A place he feels grounded in his Ngati Wai whakapapa.
For the southern boundary, for us it was settled a long way before colonisation, and it's down that Hauraki channel. And you look out and it goes beyond the horizon. And we respect all their issues on that side of the line, and we're even willing to support them. Mm-hmm. But once they come over this side, we expect them to respect ours.
But iwi on the other side of the Gulf share a different view. Paul Majuri is the chair of the Marutuahu and Pare Hauraki settlements. He says the iwi they represent have always had strong ties to Aotea and other islands throughout the Hauraki Gulf.
Those are some of the areas that historically were very important to our people, both from a location of important areas, be they wahi, tapu or pā, as well as our seasonal harvesting. Aotea is one of the important areas for the Marutuahu people. Of course, we acknowledge our whanaunga of Ngati Rehua and Ngati Wai, and we are closely related. And that speaks to some of those important background and historical matters between us through our whanaungatanga.
Ngati Wai does not dispute that neighbouring iwi can whakapapa to Aotea. However, Apirahama Edwards says Ngati Wai has the only remaining living presence on the island.
Ko tahi ana ki te iwi, ka hore anō kia wehe atu I reira. Ara, ko era e noho tonu mai ana ki runga I te motu, e tanu tonu ana o rātou mate ki reira, e haka tupu kai tonu ana I runga I te whenua, e tiaki tonu nei ngā wāhi tapu, e tahu tonu ana I ngā ahi ka hore no kia piraunoa. Ara, ko ngā hapu era o Ngati Wai e noho tonu mai na I runga I te motu.
It's not unusual for more than one iwi to have historic ties to the same area of land. These conflicting interests sometimes result in treaty settlements being challenged. When this occurs, it's called an overlapping claim, and it's up to the iwi involved to find a resolution amongst themselves.
Essentially, the Crown encourages the settling group themselves to manage those overlapping interests between themselves and their neighbours. So the Crown takes the position that they're in negotiations to settle the claim of one particular group and that they can't settle anyone else's claims, only the people that they're negotiating with.
But for iwi like Ngati Wai, this process has been hugely problematic. How could it challenge the treaty settlements of other iwi when the Crown refused to tell it exactly what land was being offered and to who?
Ngati Wai repeatedly requested information about redress being offered over Aotea for 3 years before any meaningful consultation took place. So why? What are the reasons? Why did they have to wait so long?
Look, I can't give a reason why, except that it did happen and that was unacceptable. And Te Arawhiti is dealing with Ngati Wai on what I think is more of a good faith basis than it had done before. Te Arawhiti and the Crown owes Ngati Wai an apology for that, and that is being worked out with Ngati Wai at the moment.
Ngati Wai has also criticised Marutūahu iwi for failing to engage with them at the beginning.
Yeah, I think in hindsight you could also always say, we could have done more, we should have done more. And I think, again, that applies to any group. There's been no settlement that hasn't been challenged by either hapu tribes within an area and those outside.
In 2019, a damning Waitangi Tribunal report condemned the Crown for the way it treated Ngati Wai during the overlapping claims process. It said the Crown should have recognised Ngati Wai's interests on Aotea and was wrong to exclude it from consultation early on.
Yeah, it was an ongoing struggle, and essentially it took us having to travel the length and breadth of the country to Wellington, taking with us our elders, our kaumātua, bringing some of the island and other parts of the Ngati Wai rohe to present before the tribunal our nawe. And really it wasn't until after that we've been recognised somewhat. And nā reira ko te pātai kia Ngati Wai he aha I pērai.
As a result, all negotiations among the Crown and other iwi over Aotea have been put on hold until a resolution is found. But the Waitangi Tribunal has consistently highlighted the Crown's failure to consult iwi with overlapping claims early or at all in the process. Andrew Little promises the Crown's processes will change.
So the idea is to go much earlier and say, we're engaging with this iwi, here's a range of things that are on the table, can we have your input on this?
What assurance can you give, though, that changes will be made? Because the Waitangi Tribunal has repeatedly made the same recommendations that haven't been acted on.
Yeah, look, I accept that's what the tribunal said. I can't account for what did or didn't happen in the past. Certainly I have been concerned, because I've heard from the iwi themselves too, that the overlapping interest process has to have integrity, and it has to work on the basis that the Crown is supporting and sustaining iwi, not damaging relationships, because I think that is what has happened in the past.
Dr. Carwyn Jones believes if the Crown wants to avoid any more division and anguish among iwi, it cannot simply be a bystander in the overlapping claims process.
I think the Crown needs to see itself as an active participant in these processes, because they are. Ultimately, the Crown is going to be the one to offer the settlement redress. So it has to accept that it's a participant in the process, and that process is being determined by tikanga as much as possible. The Crown can't force people to do that, but to ensure that the right incentives are there.
As a new day dawns on Aotea, Ngati Wai's struggle to find a resolution continues. Over the next few months, it plans to meet with its neighbours across the Hauraki Gulf to better understand what their relationship with Aotea is. But the overlapping claims process has certainly taken its toll.
Our relationship with the Marituahu guys has not been that flash as a result of all of this, and I know, for example, that they felt pretty aggrieved when the tribunal processes, when the Waitangi Tribunal hearings started. But as I say, I think we're slowly starting to get to know them and overcome those matters.
Paul Majuri is confident this fractured relationship will heal.
We are whanaunga, we have blood, we have shared history. We've lived together, we've shared resources together, we've reached agreements together. We've fought together, so at the famous Battle of Te Mauparawa in 1838, who did Ngati Wai call for support? It was from Marituahu. After that battle, 100 of our warriors lay dead and 10 of their warriors lay dead. So we've paid the price of whanaungatanga and blood.
Ngati Wai is not alone in its plight to stop the Crown from offering land within its rohe to other iwi without engaging with them first. There are currently 16 separate treaty settlements subject to one or more overlapping claims, and some have escalated to the Waitangi Tribunal or the courts. As Ngati Wai knows well, there's a lot at stake for everyone involved.
Can you tell me why you've put so many of your resources, your time, your people into this fight? What's at stake for you? Is it mana? Is it land?
It's both of those. I think our trustees felt that there was no way that we could just allow this to happen, that they were prepared to put in the effort and the money to take the challenge, because this is not a new thing for Ngati Wai, especially with Aotea. This has been played out before. This is yet another Crown process taking more stuff away.
Our tupuna are buried here, and there's lots of them. And that's how important it is to me, and that means something to me. And without their footprint, we're nothing. You know, they spent all their lives hoping to defend, or try to defend what belongs to us, and hoping that they'll hold on to that mana. And they try to defend that, and so it's no different for us.